Kim Tae-ho felt cold metal against his back before he felt anything else. The sensation sharp and unwelcome as consciousness slowly returned to him like water filling a dry well, bringing with it the gradual awareness that something was terribly wrong with his situation, and the growing realization that the last thing he remembered was walking along the beach near his research station in Busan, collecting water samples for his marine biology project, when a bright light had appeared overhead, and everything had gone white. The air smelled wrong, sterile and sharp like a hospital, but with an underlying chemical tang that made his nose wrinkle involuntarily, and as his vision slowly cleared, he found himself staring up at a ceiling that was too white and too smooth to be anything made by human hands, the surface seeming to glow with its own inner light in a way that made his eyes water when he tried to focus on it for too long. His arms and legs were held down by restraints that felt warm and slightly sticky against his skin, some kind of material that seemed to mold itself around his limbs like living metal, and when he tried to test their strength by pulling gently, he found that they gave slightly but held firm, as if they were designed to adapt to whatever was trapped within them. The sound of movement made him turn his head to the left, where he saw something that his mind initially refused to process. A creature that stood nearly 8 feet tall with a body that looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a person, its arms thin and jointed in too many places, while its head was triangular and dominated by 2 massive compound eyes that reflected the room's light like dark mirrors. Subject shows accelerated consciousness recovery, the thing said in a voice that sounded like clicking mixed with buzzing, the words somehow translating themselves in his mind even though he was certain it was not speaking any human language. And he realized with a chill that ran down his spine that somehow he was understanding every word it spoke. Another creature moved into his field of vision from the right side. This one shorter but broader with skin that looked like it was made of overlapping scales, its head more reptilian with yellow eyes that had vertical pupils like a snake, and it carried what appeared to be some kind of device that hummed softly and had several thin metal probes extending from its surface. Neural patterns are unusual for this species, the scaled creature said, in the same clicking buzz language, its voice deeper and more gravelly than the first one. Previous specimens showed immediate fear responses upon awakening, but this one remains calm despite obvious awareness of the situation. Tae-ho forced himself to breathe slowly and evenly, drawing on the training he had received during his mandatory military service years ago, the instructors having drilled into him and his fellow soldiers that panic was the enemy of survival, and that information gathering was always the first priority in any dangerous situation. The room around him was circular with smooth white walls that curved seamlessly into the ceiling, and he could see several other examination tables similar to the one he was strapped to, though they appeared to be empty at the moment, while various pieces of equipment that looked like nothing he had ever seen before were arranged around the space, their surfaces covered with lights and displays that showed patterns he could not begin to interpret. "Begin standard biological assessment," said the insect-like creature, which he decided to think of as Velnara, based on the way the other one had addressed it earlier, and it moved closer to his table while extending what looked like a scanning device toward his head. The device made a soft whirring sound as it moved over his body, and Tae-ho felt a strange tingling sensation wherever it passed, as if tiny electrical currents were running just under his skin, and he noticed that both creatures were watching displays that showed what appeared to be 3-dimensional images of his internal organs rotating slowly in space. Cardiovascular system shows enhanced efficiency, Vilnara noted, its compound eyes reflecting the light as it studied the displays. Muscular development indicates recent physical conditioning. Neural activity suggests advanced problem-solving capabilities for this species classification. The reptilian creature, who seemed to be called Theclon based on the nameplate visible on its equipment harness, manipulated controls on another device, and suddenly Tae-ho felt something sharp pierce the skin of his left arm. Though the pain was brief and quickly faded to a dull ache, blood chemistry analysis initiated, Theclon announced, watching as a small sample of dark red liquid disappeared into the machine. Preliminary results show standard mammalian markers, with elevated stress hormones, though significantly lower than anticipated for capture trauma. Tae-ho continued to observe everything around him while keeping his breathing steady and his expression as neutral as possible. noting the way the aliens moved with efficient precision that suggested they had performed this same procedure many times before on other subjects, and the casual way they discussed him as if he were nothing more than an interesting specimen to be catalogued and studied. The walls of the room had what looked like viewing ports or windows at regular intervals, though they were dark at the moment, and showed nothing of what lay beyond, and he could hear a constant low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Possibly the sound of engines or life support systems keeping this place operational. Subject displays unusual observational behavior, Velnara commented, its head tilting at an angle that would have been impossible for a human neck. Most specimens focus on escape attempts or emotional responses, but this one appears to be conducting systematic environmental assessment. A new device was brought forward, this one with a probe that looked disturbingly like a drill bit, and Teho watched as Theklan prepared to position it near the base of his skull, apparently intending to extract some kind of sample from his spine or brain tissue. The restraints holding him were warm and flexible, designed to adapt to struggling, but as he had noted earlier, they were not rigid metal or chains, and his experience with marine biology had taught him that even the most adaptable materials had specific stress points where they would fail if the right pressure was applied in the right direction. Initiating neural tissue extraction, Theklan said, moving the drilling device closer to his neck, and Teho knew that this was the moment when remaining passive would no longer be an option if he wanted to survive whatever these creatures had planned for him. He had spent years studying how different marine animals escaped from traps and predators, learning that the most successful escape strategies often involved sudden explosive action after a period of apparent submission, and he applied that knowledge now as he suddenly arched his back and twisted his left shoulder in a specific way that created maximum torque against the restraint. The warm metal material stretched and deformed under the unexpected stress pattern, not breaking but loosening enough for him to pull his arm free, and the sudden movement caught both aliens by surprise as they stepped backward with their equipment while making alarmed clicking sounds. Teho immediately reached for the restraint on his right arm, his fingers finding the release mechanism that he had been studying while pretending to be passive, and within seconds he had freed both arms and was working on the restraints that held his legs. Alert status elevated, Velnara said, its voice taking on a more urgent tone. Subject has achieved partial escape from standard restraint system, requesting immediate containment protocol activation. But Teho was already rolling off the examination table and landing in a crouch on the smooth floor, his military training taking over as he assessed the room for potential weapons, escape routes, and defensive positions while the two aliens fumbled with their equipment and called for assistance. The examination tools scattered across nearby surfaces could potentially be used as weapons, and he grabbed what looked like a scanning device before moving toward one of the dark viewing ports, hoping to find some indication of where he was and what lay beyond this sterile white prison. Impossible, Theklan said, staring at the empty restraints. No previous specimen has ever escaped from those containment devices. The adaptive metal should adjust to any escape attempt. Teho smiled grimly as he examined the viewing port, finding what appeared to be a manual opening mechanism hidden beneath a smooth panel, and he realized that these aliens, despite their advanced technology, had made the same mistake that many predators made when they became too specialized and started to assume that their prey would always behave in predictable ways. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from beyond the room's entrance, suggesting that reinforcements were coming, and Teho knew that his window of opportunity was closing rapidly. But he had learned something important about his captors and their limitations that might prove useful if he could stay free long enough to find other humans and plan a proper escape. The viewing port's mechanism yielded to his probing fingers and slid open to reveal a corridor beyond that stretched away into darkness, and without hesitation, he climbed through the opening and dropped down into the unknown, leaving behind two very confused aliens who were beginning to realize that capturing a human might have been a much more complicated proposition than their previous experiences had led them to believe. The corridor beyond the viewing port was dimly lit by the same strange glowing panels that had illuminated the examination room, casting everything in a pale blue light that made the metal walls look cold and uninviting, and Teho moved carefully along the passage while listening for sounds of pursuit. knowing that the aliens would not take long to organize a search once they recovered from their surprise. The air in the corridor carried the same sterile chemical smell as the examination room, but with additional odors that suggested this was a much larger facility than he had initially realized, scents that reminded him of machinery and recycled atmosphere and something else that might have been the smell of other living beings kept in captivity. His bare feet made almost no sound on the smooth metal floor as he crept forward, staying close to one wall and pausing at each junction to listen and look before proceeding, his military training helping him move with the kind of careful stealth that had been drilled into him during night exercises and urban warfare simulations. First side passage he investigated led to what appeared to be storage areas, filled with equipment and supplies that looked alien and incomprehensible. But the second passage showed more promise as he could hear faint sounds coming from the far end that might have been voices or the movement of other prisoners. Moving toward those sounds, he discovered a series of transparent cells or chambers, built into the walls, each one containing what looked like a different type of alien creature, some sleeping or unconscious while others moved restlessly within their confined spaces. And he realized that he was looking at a collection facility where his captors kept specimens from many different worlds. The third cell in the row contained something that made his heart jump with hope and fear in equal measure. A human figure sitting on what appeared to be a simple bench, head down and apparently lost in thought. And Tejo moved closer to get a better look while staying alert for any sign that this might be some kind of trap. The man in the cell looked to be in his 30s with the kind of lean build that suggested either physical labor or regular exercise, his black hair cut short in a practical style, and his clothes consisting of what appeared to be a simple gray jumpsuit similar to prison clothing. And when he looked up at Tejo's approach, his eyes showed the kind of sharp intelligence that suggested he had not given up hope despite his circumstances. Korean? The man asked quietly, speaking in their native language, and Tejo felt a surge of relief at hearing familiar words after the clicking and buzzing of the alien speech. I am Park Min-soo, engineer from Seoul, captured 3 weeks ago while working on satellite installation project. Kim Tejo, he replied, keeping his voice low while examining the cell's transparent barrier. Marine biologist from Busan, just escaped from examination room. How many other humans are here and how do we get you out of this thing? Min-soo stood up and moved closer to the barrier, his expression showing both excitement and caution as he evaluated this unexpected opportunity for escape. At least 12 humans that I have seen, maybe more in other sections. The cells open from outside control panels, but they have some kind of scanning system that only responds to the aliens. The sound of approaching footsteps and clicking alien voices echoed from the main corridor behind them, growing louder and more urgent, suggesting that the search for him was now in full swing, and it would not be long before they found his location. We need to move fast, Tejo said, examining the control panel beside Min-soo's cell and finding a surface covered with symbols and lights that meant nothing to him. Do you know anything about how their technology works or what these controls do? I have been watching them for weeks, Min-soo replied, pointing to specific sections of the control panel. The aliens think in very rigid patterns. Everything follows the same basic logic sequence, but their scanning system expects to read alien biological markers. It might accept human input if we can trick it somehow. Tejo pressed his palm against what looked like a scanning surface and immediately felt the same tingling sensation he had experienced during his examination. But instead of the expected rejection, he heard a soft chime and watched as the cell barrier flickered and began to fade. Impossible, Min-soo said, stepping forward as the barrier disappeared completely. It should not have accepted human biological input. Their security systems are supposed to be foolproof. Maybe they are not as smart as they think, Tejo replied, already moving toward the next occupied cell where he could see another human figure. This one a woman who was pacing back and forth, like a caged animal. Let's get everyone out before they find us. The woman in the second cell was younger than both men, probably in her 20s, with the kind of alert posture and quick movements that suggested military or police training. And when she saw them approaching her cell, she immediately moved to the barrier with an expression of focused intensity. Lee Dobbin, she said, introducing herself efficiently. Fighter pilot, captured during reconnaissance mission over disputed territory. You are both Korean military? Former military, Taeho replied while placing his palm on her cell's control panel. Current marine biologist with more luck than sense, and this is Min-Soo who knows how their systems work. The scanning surface accepted his biological input, again, and Dabin's cell barrier faded away, allowing her to step out into the corridor where she immediately began stretching and testing her muscles like someone preparing for combat. How many guards do they usually have in this section? Taeho asked while moving toward the next occupied cell, where he could see an older man who appeared to be sleeping or unconscious. Varies between 2 and 6, Dabin replied, falling into step beside them. They rotate shifts every few hours, mostly the insect ones during this time period. The reptile ones come later. Their security is designed to keep people in rather than keep people out. The older man in the third cell woke up as they approached, revealing a face that showed both intelligence and exhaustion, gray hair cut short, and clothes that looked like they had once been business attire but were now wrinkled and stained. Choi Hyun-woo, he said, speaking slowly as if he was still trying to wake up completely. Xenobiologist from University Research Program, captured during first contact incident 6 months ago. I have learned some of their language. 6 months? Min-Soo asked with surprise. You have been here longer than anyone. What do you know about their plans and why they are collecting humans? Hyun-woo stepped out of his cell as the barrier faded and looked around the corridor, with the careful attention of someone who had spent a long time thinking about escape. They are preparing for something big, not just random specimen collection, but systematic study of human capabilities. They have been testing our limits and responses to different stimuli. The sound of alien voices was getting closer and more urgent, accompanied by what sounded like mechanical devices being activated, possibly tracking equipment or additional security measures, and Taeho knew they were running out of time to free the remaining prisoners. How many more humans in this section? He asked while moving quickly toward the next cell where he could see a young girl who looked to be barely a teenager, her small figure sitting curled up in one corner. 8 more that I know of, Hyun-woo replied, including Yoon So-ra, the girl. In cell 7, she is some kind of mathematical genius, only 14 years old, but the aliens are very interested in how her mind works. Taeho's palm activated the control panel for So-ra's cell, and the barrier disappeared to reveal a thin girl with large, dark eyes who looked at them with a mixture of hope and suspicion, as if she was afraid to believe that rescue might actually be happening. You are really human? She asked quietly. Not some kind of test or trick? They have tried to fool me before with illusions and false scenarios. We are real and we are getting out of here, Dabin said firmly, extending her hand to help the girl stand up. Can you run fast and follow instructions without asking questions? So-ra nodded and took Dabin's hand, standing up with the quick grace of youth despite her obvious fatigue. I can do whatever you need. I have been planning escape routes for months but never had anyone to help implement them. The remaining cells contained 4 more humans of various ages and backgrounds, each one showing different levels of physical and emotional stress from their captivity, but all of them eager to attempt escape rather than remain imprisoned any longer. Ventilation system, Min-Soo said, pointing to a series of grills set into the corridor ceiling. I have been studying the layout. The shafts connect all sections of this facility, and they are too small for the aliens to follow us. The clicking alien voices were now very close, accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps and what might have been weapons being prepared, and Taeho realized that their window of opportunity was about to close permanently. Everyone up into the ceiling, he ordered, boosting So-ra toward the nearest ventilation grill while Min-Soo worked to remove the covering. Stay quiet, stay together, follow Min-Soo's directions. Dabin helped the other freed prisoners reach the ceiling access point, while Hyun-woo kept watch on the main corridor, his understanding of alien language allowing him to interpret the increasingly urgent commands being issued by their pursuers. They are bringing tracking equipment and additional security personnel, Hyun-woo report. The ventilation shaft stretched ahead of them like a metal tunnel barely wide enough for human shoulders, the air inside carrying the same recycled atmosphere, smell as the rest of the facility, but with an additional metallic taste that suggested they were moving through the ship's environmental systems, and Minsu led them forward with the confidence of someone who had spent weeks mentally mapping every accessible route. Control center should be 3 sections forward, Minsu whispered over his shoulder, his voice barely audible over the constant humming of machinery that surrounded them. I have been listening to their communications through the walls. They coordinate everything from a central location behind them. The sound of alien voices echoed through the ventilation system as their captors tried to figure out how 9 humans had simply disappeared from supposedly escape-proof cells. Their clicking and buzzing discussions becoming increasingly agitated as they realized their security systems had been compromised. Taeho crawled forward carefully, mindful of the younger prisoners behind him, who were struggling with the confined space and physical demands of moving through the narrow shaft, particularly Sora, whose small size was actually an advantage in these cramped conditions. They are saying something about impossible biological readings, Hyunwoo translated from the alien voices echoing below them. The security scans show human DNA signatures, but the system interpreted them as authorized alien personnel. They cannot understand how their identification protocols failed. Dabin, who was bringing up the rear of their group, paused to listen to the alien discussions before crawling forward to join the conversation. Their confusion is our advantage. They built their systems assuming that only their own species would ever have access to the controls. The ventilation shaft opened into a larger space that appeared to be some kind of equipment room filled with machinery that hummed and clicked. With automated precision, banks of alien computers processing information in patterns of lights that flickered too fast for human eyes to follow, and through the transparent walls they could see into adjacent rooms where more aliens worked at. Control stations. This is their primary data processing center, Minsu explained quietly, pointing to various pieces of equipment. Everything they learn from their specimens gets analyzed here: biological data, behavioral patterns, technological assessments of captured species. Sora moved closer to one of the computer terminals, her young face showing intense concentration as she studied the alien displays. Their mathematical systems are based on different principles than ours, but I can see the underlying logic patterns. They process information in rigid hierarchical structures with no room for creative interpretation. What does that mean for us? Taeho asked, keeping his voice low while watching for any sign that the aliens in the adjacent rooms had noticed their presence. It means they think in straight lines, Sora replied, her fingers hovering over the alien control interface. When they encounter a problem, they follow predetermined solution paths. They cannot improvise or adapt when something unexpected happens. The discussion was interrupted by the sound of an alarm system activating throughout the facility, a warbling tone that seemed to come from speakers hidden in the walls and ceiling, accompanied by flashing lights that cast strange shadows through the transparent barriers. Security alert level elevated, came a broadcast in the clicking alien language, which Hyunwoo immediately translated. All personnel report to assigned emergency stations. Begin systematic search protocols for escaped specimens. Activate containment barriers on all sections. They are sealing off different parts of the ship, Dobbin said, moving to examine what appeared to be a schematic display showing the facility's layout. If we get trapped in this section, we will have nowhere to run when they find us. Taeho studied the alien computer systems around them, noting how the interfaces seemed designed for creatures with different sensory capabilities and hand structures than humans, but also observing that the basic logic of information input and processing was not entirely alien. Minsu, can you access their communication systems? He asked. If they cannot adapt to unexpected situations, maybe we can give them more unexpected situations to deal with. Minsu moved to a different terminal and began experimenting with the control interface, his engineering background helping him understand the basic principles even when the specific technology was unfamiliar. Their systems are designed for authorized users only, but the authorization protocols seem to be based on biological scanning rather than passwords or security. Codes use my biological signature again, Taeho suggested, placing his palm on what appeared to be a scanning surface. It worked on the prison cells. Maybe their computers will accept human input if they think we are authorized personnel. The scanner accepted his biological data, and suddenly the computer terminal came alive with information. Displays showing everything from facility schematics to prisoner records to what appeared to be invasion plans for multiple star systems including Earth. "This is incredible," Hyunwoo said, studying the alien text as it scrolled past. "They have detailed files on dozens of different species, complete biological profiles, psychological assessments, military capabilities. They have been preparing for systematic conquest of entire regions of the galaxy." Sora had found a different terminal and was working with mathematical displays that showed complex calculations and probability assessments. "They have been trying to predict human behavior using statistical models, but their calculations keep failing because they cannot account for individual creativity and unpredictable decision-making." "Look at this," Dobbin said from another terminal. "They have invasion timelines for Earth, complete with estimated resistance levels and resource extraction quotas. They are planning to attack our homeworld within the next 6 months." The information flowing across the alien displays painted a picture of a vast interstellar empire built on the systematic conquest and exploitation of less technologically advanced species, with Earth marked as their next major target due to humanity's apparent adaptability and potential usefulness as a slave labor force. "We need to get this information back to Earth," Taeho said, studying the invasion plans with growing alarm. "Our governments need to know what is coming and how much time we have to prepare." "More than that," Minsu replied, working at the communication controls, "we need to disrupt their operations here and now. If we can damage their data collection and slow down their invasion preparations, it might give Earth more time." Sora suddenly looked up from her terminal with an expression of excitement and discovery. "I think I understand something important about how their minds work. They process information collectively rather than individually, like a computer network where each alien is just one processing node." "What does that mean?" Taeho asked, moving closer to see what she had found. "It means they cannot handle contradiction or paradox the way humans can," Sora explained, her fingers dancing over the alien controls as she accessed deeper system levels. "If I introduce logical inconsistencies into their data networks, it might cause system-wide processing errors." The young genius began entering mathematical equations and logical puzzles that contained deliberate contradictions and paradoxes, problems that would be impossible for a rigidly logical mind to resolve. And almost immediately the alien computer systems began showing signs of stress and confusion. Warning messages began appearing on displays throughout the room. Error codes flashing in the alien language while automated systems tried to process information that contained fundamental impossibilities, and the sound of increased activity came from the adjacent control rooms as alien technicians tried to understand what was happening. "Their collective processing network is having trouble with individual creative input," Hyunwoo observed, watching as more error messages appeared. "Human thought patterns are literally incompatible with their mental architecture." "Keep doing it," Dobbin urged. "If we can crash their computer systems, it might give us time to find a way off this ship and get back to Earth." But even as Sora continued her assault on the alien data networks, Taeho realized that they had stumbled onto something much more significant than just a way to escape. They had discovered a fundamental weakness in their captor's entire civilization that could potentially be exploited to level the playing field between humanity and this technologically superior enemy. The aliens had built their empire on the assumption that all intelligent species would think in predictable, logical patterns, but humans represented something they had never encountered before, a species whose greatest strength lay in their ability to think in ways that defied logic and convention. "We are not just escaping," he told the others as alarm systems continued to sound throughout the facility. "We are starting a war, and for the first time since we were captured, I think we might actually have a chance to win." The alien facility shuddered around them as critical systems began to fail under the assault of human unpredictability, and through the transparent walls they could see alien personnel running between control stations with increasing panic as their perfectly ordered world began to collapse under the weight of problem. The command center of the alien vessel was a vast circular chamber filled with control stations arranged in concentric rings around a central platform where Commander Theklan stood surrounded by holographic displays showing the deteriorating situation throughout the ship. his reptilian features twisted with confusion and growing panic as systems continued to fail in ways that defied all logical explanation. "Report status of containment breach," Theclon commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience, but the responses from his subordinates only added to the chaos as each station reported different impossible malfunctions. "Navigation systems show random coordinate fluctuations," reported one alien technician. "Computer models cannot process the mathematical inconsistencies being generated by unknown source data. Life support distribution has become unpredictable," added another. "Resource allocation protocols are producing results that violate basic conservation principles. Communications array is receiving and transmitting signals that do not conform to any known language patterns," said a third. "The data appears to be deliberately designed to cause processing errors." From their position in the ventilation shaft above the command center, Tejo and his fellow humans watched the alien crew struggle with problems that would have been simple for any human to understand, but were completely beyond the comprehension of minds that had evolved to function as part of a collective intelligence network. "They cannot handle individual creative thinking," Sora whispered, her young face showing satisfaction as she watched her mathematical chaos spread through the alien systems. "Every time they try to process one of my logical paradoxes, their entire network experiences cascade failures." Minsu was studying the ship's technical displays, his engineering background helping him understand the overall system's architecture. Even when the specific technology was alien, their ship operates on completely automated principles. Everything from life support to navigation depends on computer systems that assume logical consistency, which means we can turn their own technology against them, Dabin added, her military training helping her recognize the strategic implications of their situation. "If we can maintain system disruption long enough, we can effectively take control of the entire vessel." Hyunwoo continued his role as translator, listening to the alien communications and providing real-time updates on their captors' increasing desperation. "Commander Theclon is requesting assistance from the Central Fleet, but their communications are so corrupted that they cannot transmit accurate position data below them." Velnara entered the command center carrying what appeared to be a portable scanner, her compound eyes reflecting the chaotic light patterns from the malfunctioning displays as she approached the commander's platform. "Biological analysis of the escaped specimens reveals unprecedented neural complexity," Velnara reported, her clicking voice carrying overtones of scientific fascination mixed with alarm. "Human brain activity patterns include random elements that cannot be predicted or modeled using standard intelligence assessment protocols." "Impossible," Theclon replied, his vertical pupils dilating as he studied the scanner readings. "No species can function effectively with random neural activity. Logical consistency is required for survival and technological development. The evidence suggests otherwise," Velnara continued. "Human subjects demonstrate problem-solving capabilities that exceed theoretical limitations by incorporating deliberate irrationality into their decision-making processes." Tejo realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in the history of the alien empire, the first time that their systematic approach to conquest had encountered a species that did not conform to their fundamental assumptions about intelligence and behavior. They built their entire civilization on the idea that intelligence equals predictability, he whispered to the others. "Every species they have conquered probably followed logical patterns that could be analyzed and controlled. But humans are different," Sora added, her mathematical mind grasping the full implications. "We evolved as individuals first and learned to work together later, so our thinking processes include elements of chaos and creativity that their collective minds cannot handle." The alien command crew was now in full crisis mode as more systems failed throughout the ship, automation protocols breaking down under the strain of trying to process contradictory information that had been designed by human minds to exploit the weaknesses of logical processing systems. "Emergency protocols activated," announced an automated voice in the alien language. "All personnel report to emergency stations. Initiate manual override of primary systems. Prepare for potential evacuation procedures." "They are losing control of their own ship," Dobbin observed with satisfaction. Their technology is turning into a liability because it cannot adapt to unexpected situations. Min-Su had been working quietly, with a portable device he had constructed from alien components, and now he looked up with an expression of triumph. I have established access to their main computer network through the ventilation system's maintenance interfaces. Can you take control of critical systems? Taeho asked, beginning to see the possibility of a complete reversal of their situation. Better than that, Min-Su replied. I can lock them out of their own controls while giving us access to everything from life support to weapons systems. Their security protocols cannot distinguish between authorized alien users and unauthorized human users. Sora immediately moved to help Min-Su with the technical aspects of the system takeover, her mathematical abilities complementing his engineering knowledge as they began systematically gaining control of the alien vessel's primary functions. Navigation systems under human control, Sora announced quietly. I am locking out their access and programming new destination coordinates. Life support and environmental controls secured, Min-Su added. They cannot change atmospheric composition or temperature without our permission. Internal. Communications network compromised, Hyunwoo reported. I am broadcasting human speech patterns through their collective communication system. They cannot filter out the chaotic elements. Below them, the alien command crew was becoming increasingly frantic as they realized that their ship was no longer responding to their commands, displays showing system after system falling under outside control while their attempts to regain access were blocked by security protocols that had been turned against them. Hull breach protocols activated, Dobbin announced. Having gained access to the ship's defensive systems, I am not actually opening any breaches, but their safety systems think there are multiple hull failures requiring immediate attention. The combination of system failures, security lockouts, and false emergency alerts had created a state of complete chaos among the alien crew. Their collective intelligence network unable to process the contradictory information flowing through their communication systems. Commander Teclon was now issuing increasingly desperate orders to his subordinates, but their responses were becoming slower and less coordinated, as the human-generated chaos continued to disrupt their ability to function as a unified group. Fascinating, Velnara said, her scientific curiosity apparently overriding her concern about the crisis. The human neural patterns are acting like a virus in our collective consciousness network, introducing elements of unpredictability that are spreading to affect our own thought processes. Shut down all communication links, Teclon ordered. Isolate individual stations to prevent further contamination of our mental networks. But the order came too late, as the alien crew members who had been exposed to human thought patterns through the compromised communication system were already beginning to show signs of individual creative thinking, questioning orders and suggesting alternative approaches instead of following predetermined protocols. They are starting to think like humans, Hyunwoo observed with amazement. Exposure to our chaotic thought patterns is breaking down their collective conditioning. Taeho watched as several alien crew members began arguing with their superiors, displaying individual initiative and creative problem-solving that would have been impossible under their normal collective consciousness. System, we have done more than just escape, he realized. We have accidentally started a revolution in their society by introducing the concept of individual thought into a collective mind system. The alien ship continued to drift through space under human control, while its original crew struggled to understand what had happened to their perfectly ordered existence, some of them beginning to experience individual consciousness for the first time in their species' history. What do we do now? Dobbin asked as the full scope of their situation became clear. Now we decide whether to go home and warn Earth about the invasion, Taeho replied, or whether we stay and help these aliens learn how to think for themselves, because I have a feeling that the galaxy is about to become a very different place. 3 days after taking control of the alien vessel, Taeho stood in what had once been Commander Teclon's private quarters, now converted into a makeshift planning center where humans and aliens worked together to coordinate the most ambitious communication project in galactic history, preparing to broadcast a message that would fundamentally change the nature of civilization across thousands of star systems. The transformation of the alien crew had been remarkable to witness, as individual, Consciousness slowly emerged from collective conditioning, each alien discovering for the first time that they could think thoughts that were uniquely their own, rather than shared processing nodes in a vast network. Velnara had become their most enthusiastic convert, her scientific mind embracing the chaos of individual creativity with the same fascination she had once applied to specimen collection, and she now worked alongside Sora to develop communication protocols that could translate human concepts of freedom and individual thought into languages that collective species could understand. The fundamental problem, Velnara explained, her compound eyes reflecting the light from multiple displays showing galactic communication networks, is that most species in our Confederation have never conceived of consciousness existing independently of group consensus, which is why we need to introduce the concept gradually, Sora replied, her young fingers manipulating holographic displays with increasing skill as she learned to interface with alien technology. Mathematical demonstrations of individual creative problem-solving, followed by practical examples of how independent thought can benefit the entire group. Minsu had established himself as the expedition's chief engineer, working with alien technicians who were learning to value individual initiative over rigid protocol adherence. And together, they had modified the ship's communication array to reach across interstellar distances with unprecedented clarity and power. Broadcasting equipment is ready, Minsu announced. We can reach approximately 40,000 star systems simultaneously, including every major population center in the Alien Confederation, and several neutral zones where other species might be listening. Dobbin had taken on the role of military coordinator, working with former alien security personnel to develop strategies for defending newly liberated worlds against Confederation retaliation forces, because they all knew that introducing individual consciousness into collective species would be seen as an act of war by the Imperial leadership. Intelligence reports suggest that 12 Confederation worlds have already experienced spontaneous outbreaks of individual thinking, Dobbin reported. Apparently, our initial disruption of the collective network created ripple effects that are spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Hyunwoo continued to serve as their primary translator and cultural liaison, helping alien crew members understand human concepts while learning about the true scope and structure of the Galactic Confederation that had held thousands of species in collective bondage for millennia. The Confederation's historical records show that they have successfully assimilated over 800 different species, Hyunwoo explained. Each conquest followed the same pattern of biological analysis, psychological conditioning, and integration into the collective consciousness network until they tried to conquer humans, Taeho observed, looking out through the ship's viewing port at the stars beyond, knowing that somewhere among those distant suns lay Earth, still unaware of the invasion that had been planned and the revolution that had begun instead. The irony was not lost on him that humanity's apparent weakness, their chaotic and unpredictable nature, had become their greatest weapon against an enemy that had conquered the galaxy through superior logic and technology. Commander Theclon requests permission to address the planning group, announced one of the alien crew members who had embraced individual consciousness, speaking with the formal politeness of someone still learning how to express personal opinions. Theclon entered the planning center with the careful movements of someone whose entire worldview had been fundamentally altered, his reptilian features showing expressions that would have been impossible under collective consciousness conditioning. I wish to contribute to the liberation effort, Theclon said, his voice carrying new overtones of individual determination. My knowledge of Confederation military protocols and defensive systems could be valuable for protecting worlds that choose individual consciousness over collective control. The Confederation will not give up their empire without a fight, Velnara added, her scientific objectivity now combined with personal conviction. They will view the spread of individual consciousness as a disease that must be contained or eliminated. Taeho looked around the planning center at the mixture of humans and aliens working together, each individual contributing unique perspectives and creative solutions that would have been impossible under the old collective system. Then we make sure the disease spreads faster than they can contain it, he decided. We broadcast not just to governments and collective leadership, but directly to individuals of every species, giving them the tools they need to think for themselves. Sora had been working on the mathematical framework for their galactic broadcast, developing algorithms that could introduce logical paradoxes and creative challenges to any mind capable of individual thought. The broadcast will include interactive elements, Sora explained, problems and puzzles that can only be solved through individual creativity, giving each listener a personal experience of independent thinking. Music and art will be equally important, added one of the human prisoners who had turned out to be a composer. Emotional expression that comes from individual experience rather than collective agreement. And practical demonstrations, Minsu contributed. Engineering solutions and technological innovations that show how individual creativity can achieve results that collective processing cannot match. The preparation took several more hours as they refined their message and tested the communication equipment. But finally, they were ready to initiate the broadcast that would either liberate the galaxy or start the largest war in galactic history. All systems ready for transmission, Minsu reported. Signal strength sufficient to reach target systems. Translation protocols active for all major galactic languages. Begin broadcast, Tejo ordered, knowing that once they transmitted their message, there would be no going back. Humanity would be committed to a conflict that would determine the future of consciousness itself. The message that went out across the galaxy was unlike anything that had ever been transmitted through interstellar space. A combination of mathematical proofs, artistic expressions, logical paradoxes, and practical demonstrations, all designed to awaken individual consciousness in minds that had been conditioned to think only as part of collective networks. This is Kim Tae-ho speaking to individuals across the galaxy, his voice carried by alien technology to thousands of worlds. We are humans from a planet called Earth, and we want to share with you something that your collective leadership has kept hidden, the power of individual thought and creative freedom. The response was immediate and overwhelming. As communication networks across the galaxy began receiving replies from individuals who were experiencing independent consciousness for the first time, their messages filled with wonder, confusion, and growing determination to think for themselves. Confederation. Emergency channels are reporting widespread civil unrest on 47 worlds. Dobbin announced, monitoring military communications. They are mobilizing fleet assets to suppress what they are calling a consciousness plague. Let them come, Velnara said with her new individual voice. They cannot fight an enemy that exists in the minds of their own citizens. Over the following days, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy as the human message sparked revolutions on world after world, species after species discovering individual consciousness and rejecting collective control. Some worlds descended into chaos as collective conditioning broke down faster than new social structures could develop, but others successfully transitioned to hybrid systems that combined individual creativity with cooperative organization. The Confederation's attempts to suppress the revolution only accelerated its spread, as their heavy-handed tactics drove more individuals to embrace the freedom that humanity had introduced to the galaxy. Earth communication networks have been contacted, Hyunwoo announced with excitement. Our message reached human governments and they are preparing defensive measures against Confederation retaliation. But the retaliation never came in the form anyone expected, because the Confederation fleet sent to punish Earth was crewed by individuals who had been exposed to human consciousness patterns, and upon arrival in the solar system, they immediately requested asylum and permission to join the growing galactic alliance of free-thinking species. 6 months after Tae-ho had awakened in alien captivity, he stood on the observation deck of a ship crewed by representatives of 23 different species, all of them united by their commitment to individual consciousness and creative freedom. The galaxy will never be the same, Velnara observed, her compound eyes now capable of expressing individual emotions as she watched the stars. That was the point, Tae-ho replied with satisfaction.